Madlen Medina is not an HR consultant. She's an innovation coach who guides people teams to rethink the way they work. She worked as an employee experience designer in the Nestle headquarters, reimagining internal processes to increase engagement and performance in a moment of deep structural reorganization. Madlen is a co-founder of Employee Experience Lab, where she is helping progressive startups design remarkable employee experiences that attract and keep the people they need to achieve their ambitious goals. Welcome, Madlen.
Hi, happy to be here.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Good luck with your presentation. I will be back shortly with some interesting questions for you.
Interesting. Okay, so hi, welcome everyone. As the moderator said, I'm Madlen. I'm based in Berlin. I'm originally from Venezuela, but my career has brought me to different interesting places. So right now I'm in Berlin, and I'm the co-founder of the Employee Experience Lab. And today we want to talk about how we are helping HR and people teams to turn their processes into delightful employee experiences. So the first thing that I want to do is to introduce EX Lab to you. So who are we? We are a creative laboratory that designs employee-centric workplaces. And we call ourselves a laboratory because, as it was previously mentioned, we are not HR consultants. We actually don't have an HR background. We are innovation coaches, and what we are doing is to use innovation methods that we have learned along our career and bringing it to the HR world and trying to create more employee-centric workplaces. Because, we realize we spend a lot of time of our life at work. So we want to make it a rewarding experience where people feel valued, trusted, and empowered to stretch themselves, find their hidden potentials, and manifest them into great products that their companies are creating. So today, I wanted to share with you a very special story from our consulting times here in Berlin. And we like to call this story, I guess we actually don't need a performance management after all. And the anecdote behind this title is that this was exactly what the head of the people team in Chiron said to us in the middle of the first day of our sprint. So we already had been talking for a while, understanding, okay, what is it that you want to do? And we were set to create a new performance management process. But after doing the first session, the framing session, that was their realization. And it came a bit as a shock for their team, because I have to tell you that Chiron is a seasoned social startup here in Berlin. And what they do is that they are in a mission to increase the access to higher education for refugees. And they do it through the online platform. So as you can imagine, as any young organization, they have tried already different organizational structures. And when we met, they were in the middle of an agile transformation, so creating self-organized teams. And they were wondering, okay, how can we adapt our processes for this new reality? So they were struggling with that. That's why we became partners, and we were helping them with a design sprint. And that was their realization, maybe we don't really need a performance management after all. And I find this very interesting because this is a common pattern that we are observing with the people teams we are working lately. And this is not the story only of Chiron. This is the story of people teams that are so focused into creating structures and processes that they forget what is really, really needed from the employees and from the company. So this is guiding me to share with you what we believe are 4 simple principles to follow to turn HR processes into delightful experiences. And the first one is challenge your own box. The second one is discover what your users need. The third one is create a journey, not a checklist. And the final one is test, 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 and test. So I will go very quickly through all of them. So to share with you by telling the story of Chiron, how we moved on from not needing a performance management process and creating what their employees and the company actually needed. So when I talk about challenge your own box, this is, as I was mentioning, what we mean by that is that we're observing that the people teams we're working with are very focused on, like setting structures, designing these processes. There is kind of like a tradition of conventional processes that need to be implemented in any company. And what we are observing is that, okay, this is totally natural, because when you become an expert on your field, you kind of feel like, okay, I've seen it all. These are all the solutions that are at hand. And this can feel a bit limiting, no? Like, okay, how can I do this for this new situation? But what we are seeing is that this kind of thinking, like on traditional processes, is very limiting for people teams to unleash their true potential, to create something that is more welcoming or empowering or more targeted, to what the employees really need in order to be engaged and motivated in their day-to-day. So in this case, when this is what happened to Chiron, right? Like they thought they needed a performance management process. But when we did the first session with them, what we usually do in these framing workshops is frame the challenge. So we talk a lot about, okay, what is the company strategy? In which part of the journey the company is? What are they trying to achieve? What are your company values? Because they are like the guiding star for any design work that we do. And finally, it's about, what are your engagement surveys saying? And in this session, we realized, okay, they realize, okay, we don't really need a performance management, because actually we don't want to evaluate our employees. What we want to do is to reward them for the loyalty, for being here. And also we want to get rid of the stigma that the social companies don't develop their employees. And this was like the turning point, right? Okay, we are not really into evaluating. What we want to create is a way, so an open space now was appearing before our eyes. We want to create a way to develop our employees with the kind of limited resources that we have. So that's how we entered then into the principle number 2, which was discover what your users need. And in this case, we see that people teams are doing an amazing job with engagement surveys and happiness surveys. And what we usually recommend is to go a little bit deeper and do employee research. And there are different methods for doing that. So in that case, what we are trying to achieve with this employee research is to understand the reason behind those numbers in the surveys. And in the case of Chiron, we wanted to explore, okay, what development means to them and how they want to be developed in the company. And we realized something very interesting, and that was that employees really wanted to link their professional and personal development to the company strategy. So they don't want to develop themselves for the sake of growing and random skills that they want to gain. It was more about like, we care for our product because we really want to help refugees have access to higher education. So we want to gain the skills that can make our company grow. And that was quite of striking for the people's team, because they were so focused on, okay, what do you want to learn, that they forgot that they needed to give this some sort of direction as well. A second learning that was very interesting was that, okay, we ended up in this topic because the engagement survey was saying that people didn't feel like there was an opportunity to grow in the company. So when we did the research, we asked, okay, what keeps you here? Why are you still working in Chiron after 2-3 years? And the reason was because they felt like they were learning a lot. And we were like, okay, but how then you are answering this in the engagement survey? So what we realized is that yes, they are going through a very steep learning curve. They are learning different topics in a very fast way, like it's a young company, but the learning is not explicit to them, and that makes them feel insecure, in the sense that they don't know what to say in their next job interview, for example, what they learned and how they developed in the company. So we knew in that moment that whatever we design for Chiron, whatever this solution is going to look like, needs to make learnings explicit for employees, because that's what they really want to have at the end of their journey with the company, so that they can show what they learn and what they develop in the organization whenever they go to another place. So with these insights, this is just a few, because like here we were doing a lot of synthesis of all the everything that we learned. So I cannot go through all of them, but those were kind of like the striking ones. And after having all these insights, we said, okay, now is the moment to go into it. What is it that we're going to create? So in this brings me to the third principle, which is create a journey and not a checklist. And I think this is the core of this whole topic of turning HR processes into experiences, because you need to here kind of like park the process thinking and change it into an experience thinking. So that means to not think of whatever you are creating as a series of steps that need to be performed because there is an output that needs to be delivered, but more think of it as a journey and connect with what happens in a journey, no? And if you imagine, for example, when you're on a hike, when you're on a journey towards to go somewhere, what makes the journey an exciting experience or a memorable experience that wants you to repeat it? So if you think about it, it is about beautiful scenery. Maybe you went with somebody special. Maybe you learned something about yourself, or you brought a stone or a memento that is going to stay in your shelf in your room and is connecting you with that, making you long to repeat that experience. So all these elements are necessary to be included in these processes that you are designing in order for them to become an experience, because experiences are humanized. They connect with emotions, with senses, and they enhance relationships. And that's why it's important to take into consideration those elements whenever you are designing a new process and to put it in place. So for that, we have a model that is well known in the experience design arena, which is the 5E experience design model. And this model, what does is to guide you into the 5 elements or 5 stages of any experience. So you can use it as a kind of like a backbone for whatever you are going to create. And we enhance it with, as I said, the elements that make processes more human, which mean experiences, that are emotions, senses, and relations. So to go very quick through it, the 5 stages are excitement, entry, engagement, exit, and extension. So excitement is pretty much about how do you get people interested into going through this experience? Like, what is it that you need to trigger in them, and how do you do it? Entry is the moment that marks, okay, the experience is starting, you are entering in this journey. Engagement is about all the activities that you need to perform in order to, like make the experience happen. This is from the user perspective, I have to say, you see this from what is the user, so the employee, doing in all these stages. Exit is about the moment that signal like, okay, the experience is over. And extension is anything that you create to make people still feel connected to that experience they just went through. And the most important part here is how can you make that in a way that people want to go back to that experience. Those are the stages. And then the elements for each of the actions that the users are going to perform in each of the stages are, you need to think of the levels of emotions, because, you know, like, we're humans. So when we go through something, we don't really, maybe not remember very exactly like what we did there, but you remember how you felt. So that's why when designing, when turning processes into experience, we need to think about how these tasks are making our people feel, and then maybe arrange them in a way that at the end makes an overall good experience. Because, you know, experience design is not about eliminating unpleasant tasks. This is not what it is about, because that is not realistic. What experience design is about arranging a series of tasks in certain way that can create kind of like a journey, you know, like a ride of bumps, but also lows and ups that make people feel interested, excited, and that they can remember in a good way. And for that, you can use the senses, because to make something memorable, you need to appeal more than to one sense, you know, like it can be about visual, it can be about feeling or hearing. So if you use these elements, it's more probable that your experience will stick. And finally, the relations. This is important because if you think about it, processes are not really focused on enhancing relationships. And that's why they feel so sterile. Experiences, on the other hand, they thrive to stimulate relationships or stimulate connection between humans. And that's why they feel more humanized. And this is an element that we need to take special care in designing employee experiences, because when an employee goes through I don't know, even an HR process or whatever, if you think of onboarding, there are many people they interact with. If you think about it, it's not only the HR team, it's also the manager, is also maybe the office manager, I don't know, the IT team, you know, to set all their equipment. So all these people need to be aware, you know, like, okay, I'm part of this employee experience. My role here is to create a good experience for my colleagues, and this is going to be my role in the company. So finally, I wanted to share with you what we created for Chiron. So we understood that, yes, okay, they didn't need a performance management process, but what they needed was a way to create learning opportunities explicit for their employees with the limited resources they had, because they couldn't like offer trainings, you know, traditional trainings. So we created the growth journey. And the growth journey is a self-development experience for employees to learn on the job. And the way it works is that it supports employees into setting their own learning goals with giving them self-reflection tools that help them to match the strategy of the company with their personal development. And it also supports their achieving goals by pairing them with a growth buddy. So they engage into kind of like a peer coaching relationship with someone in their team or someone actually in the company, because they also wanted to learn to meet other people. So that's kind of like the backbone of what we create there. So I'm just going to run you through some examples of the how we thought about the experience. So for the excitement, we are not only sending a plain email, we are also pairing it with a physical map that guides them through this journey. So it's kind of like a gimmick, you know, like a tactile gimmick that they can, I'm going into this journey now, like a map. For the entry, they are receiving a goodie of maybe a tea bag or a notebook, and also the company strategy together with with an uplifting letter of how relevant they are or their work is for or development for the company. And then, I don't know, for example, for the exit and the extension, we mix these two moments together, because in theory, for experience design, it is very important to nail it at the end, because the exit of an experience is what people remember the most, and is the moment that they use to evaluate the overall experience. So that's why it's very important that you mix in the middle. Maybe there are lows and highs, but the exit needs to be good. And that's why in that stage, we are ending it up with a final meeting with their growth body, in which they exchange certificates that makes explicit that they learn and that they went through a growth process. And we also encourage a body reunion that is actually happening kind of like a team event with the whole company. So I have 5 minutes left, and I just wanted to share the last principle, which is test, test, and test. And I'm saying it 3 times, but I actually should say it more, because testing needs to happen in different batches, because this solution looks super pretty in paper, like everything looks like super well and super coherent. But actually, when you test, you get to know maybe some things are not working as I thought. And this phase actually gives a lot of, people are skeptical on how to do it, because they always wonder, okay, how I'm going to prototype this, or how I'm going to test that. But it doesn't need to get complicated. Here, actually, we were testing the self-reflection tool by using flip charts paper. And that was just helping us to understand, to convey the concept of a self-reflection tool, and see if people were interested about it. Like they found it useful, they find it helpful, they are interested in going through such an exercise. And we learned a lot here. Actually, one of the insights was that despite that Chiron is a digital first company, they really love to have this self-reflection tool in paper, because they said to us, I don't want to keep filling answers of my development in a system, because it feels like another task. And I want this to feel a moment with myself, that I'm taking for myself to reflect on my growth. So that's why testing is very important, and is one of the main principles to design experiences. So to finish, I just wanted to share that this whole process we went through is actually design thinking. I don't know if you know it. People like to complicate it, but actually is very simple. And it's just a guide to how to go about designing these experiences by taking into consideration the employee perspective. And if you are interested in trying it out, we actually created an online course, especially for teams to do it together, so they can use it as a step-by-step guide to work in their employee experiences, by having like a step-by-step guidance that we created with fun and playful videos. And we are offering a 10% discount to all HR Week participants. So you can find it in the HR Expo, or you can also connect with me perhaps in LinkedIn, or find find me there and get to know more about the online course. So thank you.